Hello, everyone. I'm ZHAO Chuang. We are going to draw the head of Tylosaurus. Relatively speaking, it's easier to draw its head, because the face of this kind of reptile didn't have many muscles, so its overall shape was similar to its skull, but we should pay attention to the following points when drawing. First of all, we have to pay attention to the sequence. The upper teeth would be blocked by its upper lip, so when drawing its mouth, we should draw the shape of the lips first, and then draw the exposed part of the teeth. According to this sequence, we won't make it wrong. There are other details that we should pay attention to, such as the size of its eyes. As we are drawing based on each part of its skull, we must know which parts were exposed and which parts should be determined first. For example, we know the size of its eyes could be deduced by the size of the skull, so we can draw these parts first. Now, let's draw its head. We drew its skull before, so we use a thin piece of paper to cover on top and draw the head based on the skull reconstruction. First, we draw its eyes. When we drew the skull, I mentioned that it had a structure called the sclerotic ring, and there was a hole in the middle. When alive, this hole was its eye. So in this position, we draw its eye first. We can take reference to animals such as monitor lizards today, and draw its eyes in the shape of an almond with pupils inside. Leaving a gap in front of the pupil as a highlight will give it more sense of three-dimensional. Draw eyelids under and over the eyes. It had a bulged bone above its eye. Show this bone with a thin line. As I've mentioned earlier, this front part was its nostrils, and we can draw the nostrils as a slit. The nostrils of marine animals need to be closed to prevent choking, so it should be a thin slit that can be closed. We can draw some wrinkles on the sides. The top should be bumped a bit, and the wrinkles on the bottom indicate that its nostrils move often. Then, draw its skin along the outside of the skull. The face of reptiles doesn't have too many muscles, so its entire face was basically skinny. Then when we move forward and extend to the front of the mouth, we have to distinguish the different textures. We can draw some keratins here, and the skin ended here. When it was alive, there might be keratins on the front part. If it was a structure for ramming, its surface should be relatively solid. Then going back, we draw the back of its head. In this place, a lot of muscles were attached from here to the bottom, so we can draw the muscles. We know from the fossils that this was its ear, and there was a small eardrum, like many modern lizards. Since the very end of its lower jaw was here, we can draw some skin and flesh on top like this. Now, we draw its mouth. We can see its teeth distributed here. Although its teeth were this long, when alive, these animals had lips that covered most of its teeth. The lips hang down a bit. Lifted up at their jugal bones, and extended back here. Because it could open its mouth very wide, its oral fissure was very large. We draw some wrinkles here at the rear. we might only see a little bit of the upper teeth, so we slightly show the exposed parts. The rest might have been covered by the upper lip. When it closed its mouth, this part was squeezed, so the scales here would form banded wrinkles. We can draw some square scales along the edge of its mouth. The discovered fossilized facial scales of mosasaurs show that they had facial scales similar to those of modern reptiles. We don't need to draw all the scales, just on the sides, especially where there were abundant structures. For example, this part is connected to another structure, so we can draw some scales at the corner, or we can also slightly show the scales where two pieces of skin met. Next, we draw the lower jaw. The same is true for the lower jaw. The lower lip would cover part of the teeth, but the lower teeth would expose more. As its flesh sagged down due to gravity. We draw the shape of its lower jaw backward. Here, let's draw the muscles on its mouth. There was a pit here and this group of muscles tucked in when it closed its mouth. We might see a little bit of its pterygoid teeth, and not many of them were exposed. Although its skull looked so narrow, when alive, there was a mass of muscles here. So its lower jaw, especially the rear part, looked much thicker than the bones. We can draw some band-like scales on the edge of the lower lip, and there's no need to draw too many. Then, backward, we draw the top of its head and its throat. Its throat together with its trunk extended backward to form a relatively smooth structure. Draw some wrinkles at the rear of the neck. In the end, we draw a protruding forked tongue at the front of the mouth. Good, like this, we've finished drawing the head of Tylosaurus.